This is the third of 3 videos of the second part of an introduction to Judaism. The second part dealing with the question of what is the essence of Judaism as a religion, faith, or good deeds. And it's in this third video that I'll now directly address that question. So the question of faith or good deeds is actually a question of philosophy of religion in general. And a question that exists not just within Judaism, but within Christianity as well. However, the nature, the character of the question in Judaism is very different than in Christianity due to the differing natures of Judaism and Christianity as religions. So Christianity is a religion in an orthodox sense, correct belief. Christianity is a religion in the sense of a faith commitment, faith not just in God but in Jesus as the Messiah. And therefore, in principle, there can be no such thing as a secular, non-believing Christian who doesn't believe in Jesus as the Messiah. By contrast, Judaism, if we're insisting on using Latin terms, the nature of Judaism is orthoprax, correct deeds, correct practice. Judaism is a religion, not in the sense of a faith commitment. It's a religion in the sense of a way of life, a culture of a people. And therefore, there can be such a notion of a secular Jew who is a non-believing Jew, may not believe in God, maybe a non-practicing Jew, a Jew who doesn't practice a traditional Jewish life of observance of law and ritual practice. And yet this secular Jew is born of a Jewish mother or is converted to the Jewish people and is a loyal member of the Jewish people, loyal to his or her people and to his or her heritage or culture. So, in light of this difference in nature between Judaism and Christianity, in light of this difference regarding the natures of Judaism and Christianity as religions, the debate expresses itself very differently in Judaism. The debate, faith or good deeds, expresses itself very differently in Judaism than in Christianity. In Christianity, due to its orthodox nature, both sides are in agreement that faith is a necessary component of religion. And the question is, to what extent good deeds are a necessary component of religion? In Judaism, it's the opposite, due to Judaism's orthoprax nature. Both sides are in agreement that good deeds are a necessary component of religion. And the question is, to what extent faith is a necessary component of religion? So now, at this point, I want to go back to the Talmud to cite a Talmudic source in which this debate within the Jewish tradition is reflected, the debate, faith or good deeds. Okay? So Rashi, the great medieval biblical commentator of the Jewish tradition who lived in the 11th century, and there's a verse right toward the end of chapter 21 of the book of Genesis. It's an obscure verse where Abraham plants a small tree. And it's obscure, it's not clear what he's doing in the plain meaning of the text. We'll leave that aside. But Rashi, on that verse, cites this ancient Talmudic source in which there's a debate between Rav and Shmuel, 2 great Talmudic rabbis. And one says, it's not clear who says what, but one says that Abraham, in planting a small tree, was planting an orchard. And the other one says that Abraham, in planting a small tree, was building an inn. Okay? So the debate is of a symbolic nature, but Rashi doesn't explain at all what the debate is about. Okay? However, the Maharal of Prague was a great commentator and thinker of the Jewish tradition who lived in the 16th century. And the Maharal of Prague, he wrote a commentary called Gur Aryeh. And in this commentary, he explains that the debate here between Rav and Shmuel is concerning this question of what is the essence of Judaism as a religion, faith, or good deeds. So the one who holds that Abraham was planting an orchard, and orchard is a Talmudic term that was part of an ancient Jewish mystical stream having roots in the ancient Talmudic tradition. A mystical stream And in the Talmudic literature, to engage, to enter the orchard means to engage in mystical metaphysical speculation. So the one who holds that Abraham was planting an orchard is arguing that the essence of Judaism as a religion is a faith commitment. And good deeds, according to this position, are seen as a necessary component of religion. That is, if a person believes in God, but lives a completely immoral life, such a person in no way can be considered, according to this position, a religious person. Okay? But, because good deeds are a necessary component of a religious life. But the essence of a religious life is a faith commitment, faith in God. So that the analogy that I would use to illustrate this position is the body and soul. That if good deeds are likened to the body, then in relation to the body, good deeds, faith is seen as the soul of Judaism, of religion. Both body and soul are necessary components of human life, but the essence of human life is the soul. So too, both good deeds and faith are necessary components of a religious life, but the essence of a religious life, the soul of a religious life, according to this position, is faith in God. Okay, so notice the implications of this position. That a moral atheist, one who doesn't believe in God but lives a truly moral life, a righteous life, such a person, even though righteous and moral, is seen as not fulfilling the essence of a religious life. This person would not be seen as a truly religious person. Okay. Now, the other position, that Abraham was building an inn. An inn is a place where you not only can sleep, but you can get a hot meal. So the inn symbolizes, the one who holds this position, that the essence of Judaism is good deeds alone, even without a faith commitment. According to this position, a faith commitment is seen like fruit after a meal, fruit that you get from an orchard. It's like fruit after a meal that, according to this position, is something nice but not necessary. The analogy that I would use to illustrate this position is not body and soul, if good deeds are likened to the body. Not body and soul, rather body and clothing. So that clothing, like the fruit after the meal, is something nice but not necessary. If we weren't embarrassed by our nudity, we could get along very well without clothing. So that according to this position, the essence of Judaism as a religion is good deeds alone, and faith is not a necessary component of religion. It's something nice but not necessary. And the implications here are that a moral atheist, by the way, parenthetically, such a position is not advocating atheism. The position is simply holding that a faith commitment is not a necessary component of a religious life. Okay? So notice the implications here regarding a moral atheist. A person who doesn't believe in God and lives a truly righteous moral life. Such a person, even without a faith commitment, is fulfilling the very essence of what it means to be religious. Okay? Now, I want to add here, or to point out, two things in relation to this, what I would consider to be a more extreme position, that the essence of religion is good deeds even without a faith commitment. The other position is, in my mind, a more moderate position, that both faith and good deeds are necessary components of religion, and the essence of religion is a faith commitment. So if we look at, in terms of this more extreme position, that the essence of religion is good deeds alone, even without a faith commitment, two things. Number one, such an extreme position is inconceivable within Christianity because of Christianity's orthodox nature. Christianity is a religion in the sense of a faith commitment, not just in God, but in Jesus as the Messiah. And therefore it's inconceivable that you could have a position that the essence of religion is good deeds alone, even without a faith commitment. Number two, this position is, I think, in my mind, very clearly the position of Hillel and Rabbi Akiva, the two greatest Talmudic rabbis in our tradition. And Hillel and Rabbi Akiva, when they speak of the essence of Judaism, they speak of simple moral decency. Hillel formulates as the essence of Judaism the ethical principle, what is hateful unto you, do not do unto others. And Rabbi Akiva points, as the essence of Judaism, he points to the biblical verse, the book of Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18, love your neighbor as yourself. And shockingly, people don't pay attention to how shocking their formulations are, but shockingly, they both omit God from their formulations. Their formulations are entirely secular. So Rabbi Akiva doesn't quote the continuation of the verse, which says, love your neighbor as yourself, I am the Lord. He cuts it off. And Hillel doesn't even quote a verse from the Bible. Hillel formulates the essence of Judaism simply on the basis of our own human experience. What is hateful unto you, do not do unto others. Okay? So, in my opinion then, the reason, or at least one of the reasons, that Hillel and Rabbi Akiva omit God from their formulations is because they hold this extreme position that exists in our ancient Talmudic tradition, that the essence of religion is good deeds alone, even without a faith commitment. A moral atheist would be seen, according to Hillel and Rabbi Akiva, as fulfilling the very essence of a religious life by virtue of living a moral, righteous life. Okay? So now, I want to point out that the debate, faith or good deeds, in Judaism and Christianity has a common middle ground. This what I call moderate position of Judaism, that both faith and good deeds are necessary components of a religious life, and faith is the essence of a religious life. Such a position exists in Christianity as well. There's a similar position. But in Christianity, because of its orthodox nature, there's an extreme position on the opposite end of the position of Hillel and Rabbi Akiva, the extreme orthoprax position that I attributed to Hillel and Rabbi Akiva, that the extreme orthoprax position, which is inconceivable that it would exist in Christianity, is that the essence of religion is good deeds alone, even without a faith commitment. Such an extreme orthoprax position cannot exist in Christianity, because Christianity is a religion in the sense of a faith commitment. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have an extreme orthodox conception that the essence of religion is faith alone, even without good deeds. And such a position, as far as I am aware, doesn't exist at all in the ancient Talmudic tradition, and there's no precedent whatsoever for such a position in the ancient Jewish tradition, Talmudic tradition. Okay, so now this extreme orthodox position in Christianity, faith, that the essence of religion is faith alone, even without good deeds. This was apparently the position of Paul, the founder of Christianity as a religion. Again, Jesus was a Jew, and Jesus didn't abandon Judaism, and Jesus didn't found a new religion, Christianity, with its own teachings apart from Judaism. It's really Paul who's the founder of Christianity as a new religion with its own teachings apart from Judaism. And Paul held this extreme orthodox conception that on the basis of faith alone, one is worthy of salvation. One is a truly religious person on the basis of faith alone, faith in Jesus. So now, parenthetically, in my mind, this position of Paul is completely absurd, because on the one hand, you can have a person who believes in Jesus as the Messiah, believes in God and believes in Jesus as the Messiah, and such a person lives a completely immoral life, is even a murderer. And such a person would be seen as fulfilling the essence of a religious life, even though the person is immoral and a murderer. And on the other hand, you can have a person who lives a completely righteous, moral life and believes in God, but doesn't believe in Jesus as the Messiah. And according to classic Christian doctrine, such a person would be damned eternally, would be seen as a theological heretic and damned eternally. And this is according to both positions in Christianity because of its orthodox nature, correct belief. Such a theological heretic, according to both positions in Christianity, the moderate position that both faith and good deeds are necessary components, but the essence is of religion is faith, and according to the extreme position of Paul that on the basis of faith alone one is worthy of salvation. According to both positions, this person was a moral person, believes in God but doesn't believe in Jesus as the Messiah, would, according to classic Christian doctrine, be damned eternally. A theological heretic was to be damned eternally. Now, I want to point out that a kind of irony here, that something that I think is very ironic, that Christianity through the ages is a Christian polemic and ideological war against Judaism. And according to this Christian polemic, or at least part of this Christian polemic, was to portray Judaism as a religion that's very harsh and judgmental, a religion of justice and punishment. And it's Christianity that's a religion of love and forgiveness and compassion. And also the God of the Hebrew Bible was portrayed, according to this Christian polemic, as the God of the Hebrew Bible was portrayed as a God who was very harsh and judgmental and punishing. Okay, this is a complete misconception with regard to Judaism. In regard to Judaism and the Hebrew Bible. If we go back to the Hebrew Bible, God has an aspect, there is an aspect of God that is judgmental and punishing. But the main aspect of God is that God is loving and forgiving and compassionate, far more than judgmental and punishing. Okay? This is the biblical conception. And also in Judaism, part of Judaism is an ideal of justice and living a life of law, which means a life of law that a person may be subject to punishment for violating law. But more important than justice and law in Judaism is a life of love and forgiveness and compassion. These are the highest ideals of Judaism. So the irony here is that Christianity portrayed itself as a religion of love and forgiveness and compassion, and yet spoke so harshly of eternal damnation for somebody who doesn't believe in Jesus as the Messiah. The person is a heretic who is damned eternally. That is a very harsh conception in my mind, and not very forgiving and loving and compassionate. And in Judaism, a person who doesn't believe in God is not to be damned eternally, and is not a heretic on the basis of the Talmud. Okay, here I have to emphasize that according to the Talmud, in the ancient Talmudic tradition, heresy is not a theological concept. It's a behavioral concept. Theological heresy enters into Judaism in the Middle Ages as an influence of Christianity. But even still, such a theological heretic who doesn't believe in God in the ancient Jewish tradition would not be seen as being subject to eternal damnation. Because there's no such notion in Judaism. There's no such notion, not in the Bible and not in the ancient Talmudic tradition, as far as I'm aware, in the ancient Talmudic tradition. If there is some source or sources that relate to eternal damnation in the ancient Talmudic literature, they would be sources of an exceptional nature that don't reflect the mainstream of the Talmudic tradition. But as far as I am aware, there's no such notion of eternal damnation in the ancient Talmudic tradition, and certainly not in the Bible. And but not only that, the concept again of heresy in the ancient Talmudic tradition is a behavioral concept. It refers to deviant behavior, not deviant theology or deviant belief. This is our ancient Talmudic tradition on the basis of the Bible. Because the Bible itself is orthoprax in nature, not orthodox. The essence of biblical religion is morality. As according to the verse from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse 18, you should do that which is right and good in the eyes of the Lord. The essence of religion is not faith, it's not ritual, it's morality. Doing, not believing, doing that which is right and good in the eyes of the Lord. So that on the basis of the Talmud and the Bible, heresy is there's no term for heresy in the Bible actually, but heresy, the concept, the idea would be of an orthoprax nature, deviant behavior. And that's what the concept is in the Talmud. It's deviant behavior, but deviant behavior that's the result of scorn and derision toward Judaism and the Jewish tradition. That is, if somebody, let's say, violates Jewish law, but not out of scorn or derision of the Jewish tradition, that would in no way be seen as heresy. Heresy is deviant behavior that's the result of scorn and derision toward Judaism or the Jewish tradition. Okay, so now to go back, I want to finish and conclude here by adding one last point, that this moderate position in common to Judaism and Christianity, that both faith and good deeds are a necessary component of a religious life, and the essence of a religious life is faith. Such a position, though in common to Judaism and Christianity, is actually has a very different nature in Judaism than Christianity due to Judaism's orthoprax nature. It has a very pragmatic nature to this moderate position, whereas in Christianity, due to its orthodox nature, it has a very theological aspect. In Judaism, there's a pragmatic aspect to this moderate position. So I'll cite one Talmudic source in that regard. There's an ancient Talmudic source which has two parts, and it attributes to God the statement, in the first part, it attributes to God the statement, better to abandon me than my Torah. And Torah here is a central term of the Jewish tradition, and it can mean, in a more specific sense, the 5 books of Moses, but more broadly it refers to Judaism as a whole. And that's what it means here in this source. Better to abandon me than my Torah. Better to abandon me than my Torah means better not to believe in God, and more important is to live a life of Torah. Live a life of Torah. Judaism, a Jewish life, is in essence a moral life, again going back to our biblical roots. You should do that which is right and good in the eyes of the Lord. The essence of Judaism is morality. So that we're talking in this first part of the Talmudic source about a situation in which we're dealing with a person who doesn't believe in God and is immoral, and the source says, attributes to God the statement, better to abandon me than my Torah. More important is living a moral life. Okay? Now that seemingly is contradicted by the second part of the source. Seemingly contradicted. It's really not a contradiction, I'll come to that. But seemingly it's contradicted by the second part, because the second part says that such people, okay, who do not believe in God and do not live a moral life, such people, it says, by dealing in Torah, I'm translating it literally, the word in Hebrew is litasek. And what it means, though, more broadly, is to observe Torah and to study Torah. So by observing and studying Torah, the source says, observing Torah, that is, coming to live a moral life, and studying Torah, such people, through the light of the Torah, will be returned to the right path, the source says. The right path. And what is the right path? Very clearly believing in God. So there's a seeming contradiction, because in the first part, God says, better to abandon me than my Torah. More important is a moral life than believing in God. The second part says that there's a very tolerant, optimistic attitude that a person who observes Torah and lives a moral life and studies Torah will come to believe in God. A very tolerant and optimistic attitude. No hint whatsoever that this person is to be damned eternally or is seen as a heretic. Okay? But what I want to point out is there's no contradiction here. It's the Talmudic source holds that the essence of Judaism is faith in God. And that's revealed in the second part, because the second part is dealing with an ideal situation. Ideally, such a person who observes Torah, studies Torah, will come to and fulfill the ideal of believing in God. And it's in the first part, there's no contradiction. The first part, we're dealing not with an ideal situation, with the unfortunate situation. We're dealing with people who don't believe in God and are immoral. And again, the Talmudic source expresses a very tolerant and optimistic attitude that through observance of Torah, a moral life, and study of Torah, such a person will come to believe in God. There is no contradiction. But what I want to point out then, also, is that there's no hint, again, in this source of eternal damnation or of this person being seen as a heresy, the person who doesn't believe in God and lives a moral life. But not only that, even should such a person not achieve the ideal of believing in God, no hint whatsoever that such a person, a moral atheist, is to be considered a heretic or to suffer eternal damnation. Again, such a concept not existing in the ancient Talmudic tradition, eternal damnation, and not existing in the Bible. So to summarize then, in Judaism, this question of faith or good deeds has a very orthoprax, pragmatic nature. Both sides are in agreement that good deeds are a necessary component of religion, and the question is to what extent faith is a necessary component of religion. And in Judaism, characteristic of its orthoprax nature, we have an extreme orthoprax position that even on the basis of good deeds alone, a person can be seen as fulfilling the very essence of what it means to be religious by virtue of living a moral life, because according to this extreme orthoprax position, faith is something that's nice but not necessary. It's not a necessary component of a religious life. So that in Judaism, both positions have an orthoprax character. The moderate position that both faith and good deeds are necessary components of religion, and the essence of religion is faith. But even according to that position, a moral atheist would be seen not as a heretic and certainly not to be damned eternally. And the more extreme orthoprax position that good deeds alone are the essence of religion, even without a faith commitment.